Well, it's not an easy task. Obviously, we have to improve the quality of education, K to 12, to make sure that the students have the capacities to go to college. Part of it, though, is we have to reach down into the high schools to find out who those students are that have the ability. And I think Americans don't, we don't fully realize the lack of opportunity, the lack of knowledge, the lack of information. Those of us who've grown up in the kinds of high schools where a large percentage of the students go to college, that information is available to everybody. That's not true in a very large fraction of Americans' high schools. And what Strive is trying to do is make sure that all of the students in our country have the opportunity that those who go to the better high schools have and take for granted. In a way, this is a particularly good moment for a movement like Strive, because I think, as I said, the awareness of this need could never have been greater. It's also an important time because I think we're going to be, unfortunately, recognizing limits of government. That there is going to have to be increasing activism by NGO, civil society, because the government's going to be facing budgetary constraints. And therefore, we can't just turn to government and say, let government fix it. It's going to have to be groups like Strive that reach out into a whole variety of areas. It's not an area where, there are some businesses that will try, but it's not an area that, in most part, businesses have succeeded in for profits. This is really an area where organizations, volunteer organizations, are likely to be more successful. It's also a good moment, I think, for these students, because one of the things that was not noticed was there was important education legislation that was signed by Congress last March that really does extend opportunities for lower-income individuals if we can get them into college. So, for instance, the Pell Grant program, which is the grant program for lower-income individuals, was increased by $68 billion for over the next 11 years. So there is now a commitment to provide more resources if we can find the students and we can get the students linked to the colleges. So there is, in that sense, really important resources. The second very important thing is a very important reform in our student loan programs. Again, they didn't get as much notice as it should have. There was a certain, some of the bank fees were eliminated. Is one of the areas where the banks were circumscribed from what they had been doing before. More broadly, they won most of the battles, but this was a little battle that was won. And starting in July 2014, students will be allowed to cap repayments on the student loans at 10% of income above a basic living allowance instead of the 15%. So we've really re-geared the program to say that we can have a student loan program that doesn't squeeze the students in the way that we've done in the past. And then their balances will be forgiven after 20 years and instead of 25 years, which is what we had before. And for the students, many of them are going into public service after only 10 years. So we provided a framework that really has provided access to financial students if we can find the students in the high schools and match them up with colleges. And that's really, as I say, a really important step forward that we can have at this particular moment. Now, I know the word leverage has taken on a very bad connotation because of the financial crisis. But one of the things about Strive is that it really is about leverage. But it's leveraging in the good way. That is to say, what you do is you have a relatively small organization that gets students on campuses and student volunteers to work with other, to go into the high school. So it's one of those things that if you really costed out what would be required to do this at market rates, it would not be feasible. But it's using the leverage of volunteers, and one of the things about these kinds of programs is that you get the kind of commitment, there's a lot of psychological literature about this, but you get a kind of commitment that you can't buy at any amount of money. You get people who are really committed to these ideas because they understand the impact it's having on lives. You know, and in that way, the kinds of macroeconomic concerns that I've raised may be secondary, but then looking at it in the way that I do from the point of view of our national needs and where we're going as a country, I do think that this is something that is very important. Now, Nick, did you want me to open up and ask questions, have them ask questions of me? I don't know what your program was.
I don't know. I think we can do this afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do questions now.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you.